In a world shrouded in intrigue and secrets, moments often slip by unnoticed, moments that could change everything. One such moment involves a subtle, seemingly invisible gesture from a figure of immense authority. What if a simple act by a legendary leader could alter the course of history? Prepare to uncover a hidden story behind an unexpected encounter that defied all expectations. The night was unusually still, a rare silence enveloping the grand cathedral that stretched toward the darkened sky. The massive stone walls, intricately carved with centuries-old symbols and stories, seemed to hold their breath, concealing secrets buried deep within their foundation. The only sounds piercing the quiet were the faint echoes of footsteps, soft, deliberate, almost ghostly, patting over cold marble floors that shone faintly under flickering torches still burning in their wall sconces. Few in the city noticed these midnight wanderings. Most had long since retreated into their dreams or sleep-worn routines, unaware of the silent watcher prowling the hallowed halls. The cathedral, a place of worship and ancient tradition, was as much a fortress of history as it was of shadows. Its corridors stretched endlessly, narrow passageways winding through stonework, leading to chambers sealed for centuries, or reserved for secret meetings that only a privileged few understood. The air was thick, with a faint aroma of incense and old parchment, a scent that seemed to linger just beyond the reach of the senses. Flickering candles cast darting shadows that danced across towering columns and stained glass windows, which remained dark for the night. Occasionally a gust of wind rattled the aged shutters, creating a whisper that sounded like a lament bent from centuries past. In this stillness, a lone figure moved with measured intent. Cloaked in a dark garment, his steps were light but purposeful, each footfall precise, as if he was highly trained to avoid any sound. His face, partly obscured by the hood, was unreadable, yet there was a calm intensity in his posture. He moved through the hallways like someone who knew every stone, every shadow, every quiet corner of this sacred place. No one knew his name, nor was he meant to be seen. His purpose was clandestine, driven by an unspoken mission. Perhaps he was a guardian, an emissary, or an agent of some hidden order, or maybe all three. What mattered most was that his presence was fleeting, almost as if he was a ghost slipping through the fabric of the night, unseen by the world. He paused momentarily before a heavy wooden door, its surface scarred from time and history. With a subtle movement, he produced a small, engraved token, a symbol of authority or a secret code, and pressed it against the door's ancient lock. A faint click confirmed that it had unlocked. As he pushed the door open with utmost care, a faint musty smell wafted out, mixing with the sense of anticipation that hung in the air. Inside, the chamber was dimly lit and sparsely furnished. A large table dominated the room, surrounded by high-backed chairs, all shrouded in shadows. This was a private sanctuary, hidden from the eyes of most, meant only for those who knew its significance. The faint glow of a single candle illuminated writings and artifacts scattered across the surface, ancient manuscripts, sealed scrolls, and symbols that seemed to hum with arcane energy. Here, the figure took a moment to listen, to the silence, to the faint murmurs of history around him, or perhaps to a distant echo of past secrets. He was fully aware of the weight of this place, of the centuries of whispers, vows, and covert plans that had unfolded within these walls. From the shadows, the figure moved toward a hidden compartment or a cloaked alcove. He carefully retrieved a small object, perhaps a parchment, a relic, or a document, and examined it briefly under the flickering candlelight. Every detail was essential. Every secret written within could shift the balance of power if revealed. He stood there, silent and contemplative, after placing the artifact carefully into his pocket. Then, with one last look around the chamber, he retraced his steps, re-triggering the lock mechanism as he disappeared back into the corridors from which he came. Outside, the night had deepened further, the darkness thickening as more shadows crept along the stone walls. Somewhere in the distance, the faint tolling of a bell or the distant cry of an owl could still be heard. Reminders that the world beyond this secret passage remained unaware of what had transpired beneath its very feet. The figure moved swiftly now, back into the night, leaving no trace of his passage, his purpose shrouded in the darkness and mystery of that nocturnal hour. And so, in the silent cathedral, beneath the watchful gaze of ancient saints and carved angels, a secret had been kept alive, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to surface once again. While the city outside was cloaked in darkness and untouched by the chaos of daily life, the mind of the Pope was elsewhere, far removed from the bustling streets and illuminated landmarks. Unknown to most, Pope Leo XIV had a plan that extended beyond the walls of his Vatican chambers, a carefully guarded secret that only a select few were privy to. Underneath the grandeur of papal robes and the weighty authority of his position, he harboured a desire for understanding, an unyielding curiosity about the world's hidden struggles and the unseen forces shaping his empire. Leo XIV had always been a man of profound contemplation, seeking wisdom not just through scripture and doctrine, but from the whispers of history, the shadows cast by power, and the silent voices of those oppressed or forgotten. His intelligence network was vast. Spies and messengers traversed the city and even travelled beyond, reporting back tales of unrest, shifting alliances and clandestine dealings. Yet beneath the surface of this information was a deeper truth he longed to uncover, something more elusive than mere political scheming. Tonight, he was in a different guise altogether. Dressed as a common man, with a simple cloak that concealed his papal insignia, the Pope moved through the city's winding alleyways like a shadow, anonymous and untraceable. No halo of authority or crown of sovereignty marked his presence. No heralds announced his arrival or departure. Instead, he was just another figure wandering through the nights, seeking answers silently. This clandestine journey was a calculated risk. The Church's enemies, or even those within, sometimes questioned the Pope's decisions or suspected him of secret dealings. To protect himself and preserve the fragile alliances that held his influence together, Leo XIV had learned the importance of discretion. Disguised this night, he could listen to the true pulse of the city, free from the constraints of formality or protocol. He slipped past darkened courtyards, along narrow cobblestone streets that were largely deserted at this hour. Occasionally, the faint glow of a lantern flickered from behind shuttered windows, illuminating the occasional figure hurriedly retreating into the shadows. Yet no one paid him any mind. The city had learned long ago that everyone had secrets, and some secrets were best left undisturbed. Pope Leo XIV's steps eventually led him toward a secluded location, an alleyway concealed behind a series of crumbling stone buildings. Here, a discreet entrance awaited, an unassuming wooden door with no markings, reinforced by iron bands and a simple latch. This was his entry point into the hidden network that connected him to confidants, agents, and couriers operating in the shadows of the city. He paused briefly, checking that no one followed, listening intently for any sign of danger or informants. The night was eerily silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the gentle rustling of dry leaves. Taking a deep breath, he pressed the small engraving against the door's lock, a token of trust and secret coded communication, and waited. The mechanism clicked softly, unlocking with a purpose that had been prearranged. Once inside, Leo IV descended a narrow staircase into an underground chamber, an enclave of safety and secrecy. The space was dimly lit by a flickering oil lamp that cast a warm glow on the stone walls covered with maps, coded messages, and ancient symbols. He moved swiftly and with measured authority, recognizing familiar figures lurking in the shadows, those who operated beneath the surface of political power, yet whose influence was perhaps just as strong. Here the Pope was not just a spiritual leader, but also a master strategist, gathering fragments of intelligence that could influence worlds far beyond his immediate realm. He approached a table lined with parchments, ink, and secret documents, evidence of clandestine dealings, covert treaties, or perhaps even proposals for future plans that could challenge adversaries unseen by the public eye. Leo XIV's eyes flicked across the symbols and scripts like a man who had seen centuries of secrets and understood their significance. He carefully examined a parchment concealed within a sealed envelope, its contents points of potential upheaval or diplomacy. Every detail mattered, each cipher, each mark, each secret whispered in the shadows. He took a moment to reflect on the weight that this knowledge carried. He knew that some truths could destroy kingdoms, while others could save millions. His mission tonight was to listen, to observe, and most importantly, to retain the delicate balance of trust and discretion. Every action was calculated, every move weighed with the understanding that history often hung on the edge of a knife. After carefully securing the documents, he rose and prepared to leave, knowing that even in this sanctuary, danger lurked just beyond the shadows. His footsteps again echoed softly as he retraced his path, re-triggering the lock and blending once more into the darkness. In the quiet hours of the night, the air grew even thicker with silence, as Pope Leo XIV moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the hidden chamber. Every step was deliberate, each movement calculated to avoid any echo that might betray his presence. As he approached the shadowy figure, waiting in the dim corner of the room, he felt the faintest tremor of anticipation, the kind that thrums in the chest of someone who understands the gravity of the moment yet remains composed. The figure standing in the shadows was draped in darkness, his silhouette barely distinguishable from the surrounding gloom. To the casual observer, he might have appeared to be merely another visitor, a figment of the night, nothing more. But Leo XIV recognized the subtle hints of tension in the posture, the slight shift of the figure's weight, and the quiet breathing that hinted at alertness. It was a moment suspended in time, where unspoken words and hidden truths danced just beneath the surface. The Pope hesitated briefly, studying the figure from afar. In the shadow's half-light, he could see the faint outline of a head bowed slightly, perhaps in respect, or maybe in anticipation of what was to come. The air around them was charged with a strange energy, power, secrecy, and a shared understanding that whatever transpired here could ripple outward with consequences none could yet foresee. With a smooth, deliberate motion, the Pope stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "You are where you are supposed to be," he said softly, voice resonating with a calm authority that belied the weight of his secret identity. His words carried no threat or command, but rather a reassurance, an acknowledgement that the trust had already been established beneath the formal veneer of their encounter. The shadowed figure finally lifted his head, revealing eyes that darted briefly across Leo XIV's face, searching yet knowing. Those eyes seemed to hold centuries of secrets, knowledge far beyond what was commonplace. Without a word, he offered a slight nod, an unspoken agreement that the meeting could commence. In that single gesture, a universe of messages passed: trust, caution, and an understanding that silence was as much a part of this exchange as the words spoken often were in public. The room seemed to shrink around them as the figures moved closer, their shadows merging under the flickering candlelight. The Pope extended his hand toward the figure, not in greeting, but in a gesture signifying a silent communication, a signal that everything was in place, that the moment was ripe for the revelation of what had been carefully concealed. In response, the shadowed figure reached inside his cloak, extracting a small object wrapped in cloth and sealed with wax, perhaps a miniature relic, a coded message, or an emblem essential to the clandestine affair. Leo XIV's gaze sharpened as he watched the exchange, instinctively understanding that whatever was being passed represented more than just paper or artifact. It was a symbol of trust, of allegiance, or perhaps a secret that could threaten worlds beyond this hidden chamber. Without hesitation, the Pope took the parcel gently but firmly, aware that this act irrevocably linked them in a web of clandestine dealings. As he received the item, he felt a faint but very real pulse, an invisible thread connecting him not just to the shadowy figure, but to the secret forces that moved behind the curtain of history. The room seemed to hold its breath, and in that suspended silence, the weight of their exchange became almost tangible. The darkness still lurked, hiding every nuance, every spoken word, but in their shared space, a silent understanding was forged. They had crossed a threshold, stepping into a realm where words were too fragile and secrets too dangerous to utter aloud. Suddenly, the shadowy figure took a step back, withdrawing into the shadows once again. His gaze lingered on Leo XIV for a moment longer, a silent challenge, perhaps, or a warning. The Pope nodded slightly, a signal of acknowledgement, before turning to leave the chamber, not hurried, but with the precision of a man who knew he had just grasped a fragment of an invisible chain that bound current and future. As Leo XIV disappeared into the darkness, the figure remained motionless for a few seconds longer, his silhouette melting into the shadows. The room returned to its silent stillness, the only movement the flickering of the candle flame, which cast eerie shadows that seemed to stretch farther into the night. shadows that knew secrets had just sealed in the darkness. In the aftermath of that encounter, everything had subtly shifted. The unspoken message exchanged in the shadows would ripple outward over time, like ripples on a still pond, touching distant lands, unseen alliances, and secret plans that would shape worlds, all hidden beneath the surface of the seemingly peaceful night. As the clandestine exchange reached its quiet climax, Pope Leo XIV found himself once again in the realm of unspoken communication, where actions often speak louder than words. From his experience, he understood that in worlds veiled by secrecy and tradition, a single gesture could carry more weight than speeches or proclamations. It was an act, a move, a silent affirmation that conveyed prophecy, authority, and resolve, an act that would ripple through the fabric of history long after the night had faded into memory. In the dim glow of the chamber's flickering candle, Leo XIV took a measured step closer to the shadowed figure. The air between them was charged, dense with anticipation. Time seemed to slow, every breath drawn in carefully, every heartbeat echoing like a distant drum. The Pope's hand moved with deliberate precision, not hurried, not hesitant, but purposeful. Extending his arm outward, the gesture was subtle yet commanding, a soft, almost imperceptible raise of the hand, palm slightly open, but with fingers extended in a specific manner. His fingertips pressed against each other gently, a signal understood only by those trained to interpret such signs. This was no casual wave or greeting. It was a carefully crafted sign of intent, authority, and connection. It was an ancient gesture, passed down through eras of secret dealings, a silent toast to trust and allegiance. The shadowed figure's eyes flickered with recognition. Every muscle in his form tensed slightly as he perceived that the gesture was more than a simple movement. It was a language of its own. His eyes conveyed understanding, an acknowledgement that this was the moment of mutual commitment, the silent oath underlying their secret exchange. Leo XIV's gesture was more than a mere signal. It was a symbol. It embodied power, so subtle that only those attuned to its meaning could grasp its significance. It was an affirmation that whatever had been passed or agreed upon was now sealed. A pact reinforced, not through oaths spoken aloud, but through this intricate dance of silent communication. The gesture itself seemed to embody a deeper message. The tilt of the hand, slightly raised, signified elevation, authority, and unwavering resolve. The placement of the fingers signalled stability and balance, a reminder that all actions taken under this sign would be rooted in steadfast conviction. The open palm, often symbolic of transparency, was also a warning. Nothing was hidden, no deception remained, but trust was placed in the integrity of this silent code. The shadowed figure responded with a faint nod, an almost imperceptible movement that yet held tremendous weight. His head slightly inclined, signalling understanding and acceptance. In that silent exchange, they confirmed a shared purpose, a commitment to act according to the trust embodied in that gesture. It was a pact, a vow not written on parchment, but etched into the fabric of their clandestine relationship. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath once again, as if the very walls understood the gravity of their silent communication. The flickering candlelight danced across the figures, casting shadows that seemed to extend intertwine and become part of the complex web of secrets spun by this quiet act. The significance of this gesture was conveyed not just through its form, but through the weight of history, tradition, and unbreakable assurance distilled into that single movement. This gesture was a key, one that unlocked a vault of clandestine allegiances, hidden plans, and unseen influence. It was a symbol of loyalty beyond mere words, a mark of trust that could be invoked at any future moment, a silent signal that could shift the delicate balance of power with a mere flick of the hand. As the Pope slowly withdrew his arm, the ripple of unspoken understanding remained lingering in the air. Neither man spoke, neither needed to. The act had sealed their intentions more firmly than words ever could. It was a reminder that in worlds of shadows, the most potent communication was often the quietest. In that fleeting moment, the power of the gesture resided in its ability to communicate beyond language, beyond time, resonating like a secret drumbeat in the depths of history. They understood that this act, the placement of fingers, the tilt of the hand, was a signal for the ages, a hidden message carried down through generations, waiting only for the right moment to be revealed. The flickering candle's flame cast a final passing glow over their silent exchange, before it guttered and collapsed into darkness once more. The room was silent again, yet the memory of that gesture remained, the unspoken testament to a secret alliance, the embodiment of trust, authority, and the shared knowledge that some truths could only be communicated through the language of gestures. Its significance would echo in history, an invisible thread linking the present to a future shaped in shadows, watched over by those who understood the silent power of a hand extended in trust. The moment the silent exchange concluded, Pope Leo XIV's figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness like a phantom, vanishing with the subtlety of a whisper, carried away by a light breeze. His departure was as enigmatic as his arrival, an absence that left behind an eerie silence, almost as if the room itself had been holding its breath in anticipation of the next move. No hurried footsteps echoed through the corridors. No sign of a hurried retreat or hurried footsteps betrayed the secretive presence that had just come and gone. He moved with the grace of someone who knew precisely how to vanish without a trace, retracing his steps along the shadow-laden hallways, carefully retrenching the hidden latch and ensuring every lock clicked securely behind him. As he slipped into the underground chamber, he was keenly aware that the shadows were now his allies, silent guardians of the secret he had just transferred. The faint hum of the distant city's nocturnal symphony persisted outside, indifferent to the profound transfer of power and must that had just taken place inside those stone walls. Once outside, the night stretched before him, an endless swath of darkness punctuated only by the occasional flicker of a distant lamp, or the gentle rustling of dormant leaves in the breeze. The Pope's figure blended into the deserted streets, undetectable by any observer. Every step was measured, deliberate, almost like a ritual of concealment, as if he was dissolving into the very fabric of the night itself. The shadows welcomed him back, elongating behind him like dark streaks cast by an unseen painter. His path took him away from the clandestine meeting place, moving through winding alleys and quiet back streets where few dared to tread. The city, with all its nocturnal secrets, was unaware of how fragile it was, the delicate threads of influence and allegiance that had just been pulled or secured during that silent exchange. The Pope's mind was calm, yet alert. He knew the importance of his unseen departure, the subtlety that rendered the event untraceable to anyone who might be watching or listening. Even those who might have been lurking nearby, maybe agents of rivals or spies within the shadows, would find no sign of his passage. Every movement was purposefully timed, every step calculated to leave no evidence behind. The street lamps cast pools of yellowish glow on the cobblestones, but no light revealed the secret that had just transpired deep beneath their glow. Every corner Leo XIV turned, every alley he skittered through, seemed designed to erase any trace of his presence. Meanwhile, the shadowed figure in the chamber remained motionless for a few moments after Leo XIV's departure. His silhouette lingered within the gloom, and for a fleeting instant, a faint smile seemed to cross his face. It was the kind of smile that spoke of unspoken victories, quiet assurance, and the knowledge that a significant piece of the hidden puzzle had just been moved into place. That brief expression lingered before he also melted back into the shadows, disappearing into the unseen corners of the night. The sealed object, the relic, message, or emblem, was now in the possession of the Pope, tucked carefully into his cloak as if it were a fragile treasure. Its true significance was known only to those involved in the secret exchange, yet in Leo XIV's mind, it sparked 1,000 subtle thoughts, plans, and what-ifs. That small piece of clandestine trust had the power to ripple through history, perhaps to serve as a key to future negotiations, or as a safeguard against impending threats. Its value was immense, and the transfer completed in a manner that would leave no footprints, no evidence, no suspicion. Across the miles, in the quiet darkness of the night, the world remained oblivious to what had taken place. The heavens above continued their silent watch, and the city's nightly activity resumed as if nothing had occurred. But beneath the surface, a new dynamic had been quietly set into motion, dominated by unseen hands and secrets kept locked away from prying eyes and ears. The following hours saw the Pope retreat to his private chambers, where he would carefully secure the artifacts and documents, ensuring that everything remained hidden, yet accessible if needed. He knew that this night's actions would resonate in ways no one could yet understand, shifting the unseen balance of power with every careful move. Each secret whispered in the shadows was a thread woven into the tapestry of future events, an invisible tapestry intertwined with destiny itself. In the days and weeks ahead, there was little indication of the profound exchange that had just occurred. The world carried on, unaware of the clandestine hand that had just guided it. By quiet influence, secret signs, and untraceable bonds. But the ripples of this night's events would spread far and wide, subtly shaping the course of history, loyalty, and allegiance. Years passed, but the echoes of that night's clandestine encounter persisted beneath the surface of history, quietly influencing decisions, shaping alliances, and guiding the unseen currents of power. The world hundreds of miles away remained largely unaware of the intricate web woven by those shadows, an invisible thread connecting destinies, loyalties, and the silent vibrations of trust sealed with a gesture and an exchange that had taken place in darkness. The legacy of that single, subtle act, the quiet movement of a hand, the signals exchanged in secret, became a cornerstone of influence. It was a symbol of unspoken commitment, a cryptic message that carried weight beyond the visible. Over time, it was whispered about amongst the most trusted circles, those who understood that some bonds transcended words, that some pacts could only be confirmed through silent gestures whose meanings had been passed down through generations. In the years that followed, the silent pact remained a hidden but potent force. It influenced diplomatic negotiations, clandestine alliances, and even military strategies. Individuals who held this knowledge navigated the treacherous waters of politics and faith with an unshakable confidence, anchored in the quiet assurance that their allegiance was sealed in the shadows, under the watch of those who understood the true language of power. Stories and legends gradually took shape around this unseen influence. Tales circulated of secret meetings and unseen hands guiding the fate of nations, where the true power lay not in speeches or open treaties, but in gestures whispered across rooms darkened by history and trust. It was said that some of the most pivotal moments, wars averted, treaties signed, or rebellions crushed, had the subtle stamp of that night's silent generosity, that discreet but decisive gesture of authority. Meanwhile, in hidden chambers of the church and corridors of the secret forums, the legacy lived on, often in the form of subtle nods and unspoken signals. The leadership, those entrusted with maintaining the balance of power, knew that words could be betrayed, but gestures, trust, and symbols were far more durable. These silent bonds formed an unbreakable chain, linking past to present, tradition to future, in a tapestry woven through secrecy. Some of the most influential figures in history, statesmen, religious leaders, and clandestine operatives, carried this knowledge as a sacred trust, passing it quietly from hand to hand, generation to generation. They understood that the gesture, simple yet profound, could be a key to unlocking or sealing monumental decisions, acting as a silent oath that could be invoked in moments of crisis. Throughout the changing tides of history, the influence of that night persisted. It was invoked in moments of delicate diplomacy, where a subtle sign might determine the fate of kingdoms, or when trust was exchanged in a fleeting glance. A gesture that was understood only by those trained in its meaning. It was a secret language, spoken softly beneath the roar of public speeches and grand appearances. A language that communicated resolve, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds of shared purpose. In some cases, the legacy manifested in words only the initiated understood. A phrase, a sign, a ritual that carried centuries of weight. These hidden traditions continued to shape decisions in the shadows of power, subtly guiding the course of history in ways no public record could fully capture. The deepest secrets remained buried, but their consequences rippled outward, living on in the unseen fabric of influence that linked one era to the next. The story of that night remained cloaked in secrecy, yet it was constantly at work, an invisible force that reinforced trust where words might falter. It served as a reminder to those in the know that true power often resided in the quiet, in the gestures and symbols that only a select few could interpret. It was an oath of loyalty, sealed not with ink or blood, but with a shared understanding. A silent promise that, no matter how turbulent the world became, certain alliances would endure, sealed in secrecy and strengthened by the unspoken language of trust. As decades turned into centuries, the legend grew, its true origins fading into myth, while its influence subtly persisted. Historians and scholars whispered about the mysterious power of gestures and symbols in shaping world events, although few ever truly understood the depth of their significance. But those who carried the knowledge knew that in the silence there lay an unbreakable chain, a silent legacy handed down to guard, preserve, and influence the future. That legacy remained alive in hidden archives, in secret meetings, and in the subtle nods exchanged by trusted confidants. It was an invisible hand guiding the course of history in ways too delicate for the eye, but too powerful to ignore. And so, the silent act, the gesture that had once signified trust, authority, and allegiance, continued to echo across the ages, a testament to the unspoken power of secrets kept in shadows, waiting patiently for the moment when they would be called upon again.